is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws.
It is November 3rd, 2025, and that means we are talking about the rain-drenched 7-game fall classic between the Red Sox and Reds from 50 years ago. Johnny Bench holding Will McEnany in his arms on the cover of Sports Illustrated after Cincinnati won an all-time great World Series. Hello, everyone. Hello again, everyone. I'll get it out. And thanks for tuning in to the Past Our Prime podcast. Mark Hoffman and Bill Mahoney join me, Scott Johnston, every week to look back at the world of sports from 50 years ago. And we've had some good ones of late, but this World Series from 1975, wow, still one of the all-time greats. If not, I think when you talk about great World Series, this is probably still the one that comes to mind first for most people.
Yeah, because the Fisk home run.
Yep.
That's what they remember.
I'm going to ask you guys about a World Series that sticks in your mind. It doesn't have to be necessarily the most dramatic. It could be one that's probably, like I'm sure the 2002 World Series is one Bill remembers, but give me a World Series that jumps out at you.
Well, I guess mine would be the two ones the Tigers won in my lifetime in 68 and 84. And as I told you, in 68, it was a day game. So I watched the sixth inning at lunchtime and had to find out after class that after school that the Tigers won. But in 84, again, I did not watch the game live. There was the fifth and decisive game against the Padres. There was a threat the game could get rained out. So my roommate at the time, Mitch, had tickets to the Raider game that day. So I said, well, I might as well go to the Raider game because I don't want to stay home and then the game's rained out. So they ended up playing the game and ended up winning the game. And we raced back home after the Raider game. And of course, I got on right as they were signing off. And that's it. That was a great locker room celebration. See you all later. So I didn't get to see any of it. So a couple days later at work, I went in and asked Josh, who was doing sports that night, could I just sit with the earphones on and watch the game, because I didn't get a chance to really watch it. And he said, yes, but I don't want you to cheering or doing anything because we're working on it. I said, okay. And they get to the part where Kirk Gibson comes up with that clutch home run to change game 5, really iced it for the Tigers. And Dick Williams goes out to talk to Goose Gossage, and I yell out, walk him. And then Josh looked at me and said, get out of the room.
Really?
He was joking, but not really.
Billy, what about you?
Just being a kid sitting in Todd Gino's house and watching the Yankees-Dodgers World Series from 77 and 78. I know Reggie Jackson's 3 home runs were part of that, but just, the one where Reggie took the ball off his hip. And I remember those because I remember just being so in love with baseball at that time, and then later on, what was it? Was it 87? I may be wrong. Jack Morris's 12-inning game or 10-inning game he threw against the Braves.
Atlanta Braves?
91.
Yeah.
91. I was there.
I watched that whole game, and it was just amazing. And where we are now, when you get taken out after 105 pitches or whatever, that won't happen nowadays. But back in the day, man, that guy just was dealing.
Jack Morris had an extra gear. He was a really good pitcher, but in certain moments, you just went up another steps in the 84 playoffs and then in the 91 playoffs. So once for the Tigers, once for the Twins.
Yeah,
back then, pitchers were taught to finish the game, and there were certain guys that were, Bob Gibson was obviously famous for, come and get the ball from him, but Morris was right up there, who was going to go get the ball from Jack Morris in that game, He would have pitched 14 innings in that game if he had to. So
he was a surly guy, man. You don't want to piss him off, man.
No.
He was in the 91 World Series when we tried to ask him, hey, you're facing Steve Avery in this game. And Avery said, and he stopped you on the track. Oh, let me guess. He grew up a Tigers fan and I was his idol. I hate that crap. Yeah. And I mentioned it to him at the winter meetings. I ran into him and he says, "Yeah, I was a bit of a jerk back then."
Well, that's what Randy Johnson says too. If you hear interviews with Randy Johnson, he goes, I wasn't the nicest guy back then, and like
Yeah,
bygones be bygones.
look, a lot of these guys, and I'm not making excuses for them, but a lot of these guys got their competitive spirit by, being, like pissed off, like
Yeah,
trying to get these bastards out,
yeah,
they weren't all best friends the way they are now. So,
yeah. I
uh,
liked it better than.
say again.
I liked it better than.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'll talk about a World Series that I didn't go to, and I went to games 1 and 2 of the 1989 World Series up in Oakland, and the A's took both games. And back then, you didn't need to show any ID on your press passes. So if you had press passes, they were like having great tickets to the
Mm.
game. And so I had KCal's press passes, but I had to come back down to LA and go to work. So I gave my press passes for games 3 and 4 and 5 to my dad and my best friend, and then they took two people. I think another friend, and I think my best friend brought his dad, and they were at Candlestick Park for Game 3 when the
Wow.
earthquake hit. And later that night, we did a phone interview with my dad from Candlestick Park on cake on actually at the time it was KHJ,
Yep.
and yeah, they said, and Bob Lurie was the owner of the Giants, and they've had this big, huge spread for a post game, stuff they were going to do for the media and everything. That's what they used to do back then. And he just said, "Well, we got all this food and all this drink. Let's just open it up." And so my dad and and my best friend, they go into this media, party basically that was supposed to start at like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Instead, it started at like 6, and you couldn't go anywhere. There was nowhere, no way to get across the bay. So they just drank and ate and had they both said for years it was one of the best nights of their life.
How fun. Yeah, people getting crushed under freeways. But hey, man,
The whole
you know,
city's,
just on fire.
being pancaked,
Yeah.
and they're
Yep.
like, "This is great. Give me another shrimp."
Pass the bubbly, Bob.
Oh, too funny.
It's funny. I'm thinking about your press passes, about how you gave them to your father and he gave it to a friend. I just think I remember a story at Channel 9 years ago where one of the producers had a couple press passes to a soccer game and he gave it to himself and his son.
Yeah.
Son was like 6,
Yeah.
and then he got
This
like
looks like
busted.
you.
Like the guy called him out, said, "What are you doing here?"
I,
That's
I,
And he's
I
like,
remember
"What?"
I remember
I
in
mean,
the
just the
mid
thought it'd be like me going to a Dodger game with press passes and giving one to Callie. Some guy going, "Yeah, she'll be interviewing Trinan after the game."
I remember in the mid 80s, and we had press passes, myself and Tony Richards, and we were both like in our mid 20s, get into the elevator to go up to the press box. And I forgot the guy's name. He worked for the Angels. He was almost like a security guy, but he was like, I don't know, he was in media. I can't remember. I could picture him. I can't remember what he was. But he puts his hand in front of us like, "Nope, this is for media people only." We go, "We know." And then he puts his hand out again. "No, no, this is for media people only." And I guess we looked too young to him. And we stick our things that we know we are members of the media. And then he like looks at us dumbfounded, like, "Huh? What? No, you can't be."
Off the tape, roll the reel. Scorecard brings back what's real.
All right, let's get started here on the scorecard. Mark, again, lead us off.
I'll lead you off with a football powerhouse. Well, maybe that's the wrong choice of words. Oberlin College in Ohio, they have hit rock bottom. You see, the team faced a 6-game schedule with a squad that hardly had enough players to field the team. They lost 28-0 to a school called Center, 35-13 to Carnegie Mellon. and 21-16 to Hamilton. They had only 16 men available for a game with Kenyon a couple of Saturdays ago. So they just had, guys going both ways and stuff like that. But they ended up winning the game. They upset them. But this is a team that very rarely ever wins. They between 1990 and 2001, I think they lost more games than any college football program in the country. And if you look at their logo and their colors, they look like USC, but just an awful program for football, and it's a Division III program. But what's really unusual is one of the players in the early days of the program is probably one of the most well-known football players of all time because of his last name. His last name was Heisman, and the trophy is named after John Heisman, who played at Oberlin.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Billy.
Okay, this is about people that are interested in the Montreal Olympics getting tickets for that, but they were frustrated because all the tickets, they were just gone simultaneously once the announcement made they were on sale. But no, Montgomery Ward stepped in and they received more than 400,000 tickets to the summer's games. But for the people, don't get so excited about that because unless you're interested in soccer or some of the so-called minor sports, which aren't minor nowadays, the pickings are slim. Events which good seats are available besides soccer are archery, canoeing, equestrian sports, field hockey, judo, modern pentathlon, rowing, shooting, and yachting. You might find tickets for basketball, boxing, and team handball, but not for the finals. So there you go. Get some of the minor sports. Right now, soccer would be one of the bigger tickets around, though.
Yeah. I remember in 84 when the Olympics came, going to basically any event was pretty cool.
I'd go to anyone. Yeah. I
It
mean,
didn't matter what you saw. I remember going to soccer games and baseball games where like it wasn't like I was seeing the Team USA. I was just seeing whoever was playing. I think I saw a Greece, Czechoslovakia soccer match or something like that. I mean,
yeah.
it was all great.
I don't
Loved
know how you watch yachting though. Don't they go way out and then they come back? I mean, what do you truly like? Hey, there it goes. It'll be back in like 4 hours. Okay, I'll just keep my seat. I don't know. What do you do?
You just keep watching it, damn
Exactly.
it. I got one. The continuing battle between men's sports and women's sports triggered by Title IX, the federal law that says colleges must provide opportunities to both sexes and college athletics, has cost the University of Maryland one of their basketball coaches. No, not Lefty Driesell, but their women's basketball coach, Dorothy McKnight. She says that the idea of athletic scholarships for women is a mistake and she wants no part of it. Her reasons are simple. She says she does not want to sit on a recruit's doorstep the way men's coaches do, and she feels things will come to that. I figure we'll be into the buying and selling business, she says, and I can't do that. I don't believe this is being done for the girls. There's going to have to be something coming back. I've had pressure already without scholarships. Pretty soon they'll be telling me I have to win or that I'd better get that guard or that pitcher. I don't need it. Right now, she says, I ask a girl, can we help you? But under this new program, I'd be asking, can you help us? So just a really interesting, I thought, perspective that she was like, look, we're giving these amateur athletes, scholarships and when they come here, I'm not going to go out and recruit them and do all that kind of stuff and make this into like a win. We got a win type program, which of course now that's all it is. Certainly the women have caught up to us in that regard. But just thought it was interesting that she realized that it would no longer be what can I do for you, but what can you do for me? And that's never been more true than with the transfer portal because, if a kid doesn't like the situation he's in, he gone.
And even if he does like it and wants more money.
That's true. That's true.
They said it and meant it.
They said it. Dr. J. What did he say, Bill?
Well, this after his teammate and best friend Willie Sojourner was cut from the New York Nets squad after his 4-year no-cut contract had terminated. The only thing hurting him is his first 4 years.
Other than that,
He's done great. He showed up.
It was great.
Yeah.
We have quite a trio here on the They Said It this week. Mark, you go with Mr. Gordie Howe, right?
Well, it's actually Frank Hughes of the Houston Aeros and what it means to have Gordie Howe back for the 75-76 WHA season. He says probably about 13,000 in the playoffs.
$13,000, right?
Yeah,
No,
money
just
Yeah,
again.
13,000.
yeah.
They're going to give him like five numbers and that's it. A one, a three, and three zeros.
Too funny.
No, yeah, $13,000,
Yeah, yeah.
which I guess is the playoff share.
Share or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Right. Arnold Palmer, on his desire for relief from the intensity of being Arnold Palmer, said, I just wish I had enough money so that I could do nothing but fly my plane, play a little golf, and go walking in the woods. Oh, if he just had enough money to do those three things. I too am just wishing for the day where I can go fly my plane.
I just think how many, I mean, I guess if you read it that way, you're just going to go walk in the woods.
Right?
Sounds like you might have a disease.
Yeah.
What happened to Scott? I don't know. He just went walking in the woods.
I never saw him again.
Exactly. He went with Mark, who was naked.
I was streaking and enjoying myself.
Everything came up Reds. The first 5 games of the 1975 World Series were pretty entertaining, with the Reds holding a 3-2 lead in the series, heading back to Boston. Rain was also heading to Boston, so the series was delayed by a few days before they played Game 6. As it turns out, it was worth the wait. Mark, you think that the many days of rain that delayed this series by a few days may have played into the quality of the last 2 games of this series?
Well, it sure can't hurt. You got to remember the 162 game schedule. You have at that time there was only one other round of playoffs, the league championship series, but still, and then you're playing a tough 5 game series against your opponent with highs and lows. And then the rain delay, it just lets your body rest and kind of, get a little more energized because the last 2 games of the series were fantastic.
Yeah, we know how it ended, Game 6, the Fisk HR off the foul pole in the 12th inning, but there was so much more. Fred Lynn gets the game for the Sox off to a good start, a 3-run blast in the first, but the Reds battled back, and when Cesar Geronimo hits a solo shot in the 8th, they had a 6-3 lead, and it's looking like this thing is over, but that's when it gets interesting. With 2 on and 2 out in the 8th, Raleigh Eastwick on the mound for Cincy. Bernie Carbo pinch hits. And for the second time in the series, he hits a pinch hit home run. Game tied at 6. And Bill, we may never have even heard of Carlton Fisk hitting a home run if the Sox had just taken care of business in the bottom of the 9th.
That's exactly right. They load the bases with no out. Fredlin, who you just mentioned, hit a 3-run home run in the first, hit into a double play. And usually you don't hear the 7-2 double plays. Denny Doyle, the ball that Lynn hit wasn't that far down the left field line. And George Foster threw him out by a mile. And then Petrocelli grounds out, inning over. But after the game, third base coach Don Zimmer protested that he had not sent Doyle home on that fly out by Lynn. He said, on the contrary, I started yelling, no, no, no. Doyle came up to me after the game and said, oh, I thought you said go, go, go. Miscommunication.
It's like the Go-Go Sox.
That's a horrible one.
Yes.
He was out by a mile.
He was. I mean, it was a great throw in terms of where Foster was right next to the left field stands, but it was a great throw. I mean, couldn't have made a better throw.
And then Bill in the 11th, the Reds with a chance to win it.
Yeah, Joe Morgan smokes one out to right field. It looks like if it's not going to be gone, it's going to bounce off the small wall. But Dwight Evans puts his mitt out, catches the ball. Then before he goes down, he turns around and ends up doubling up Ken Griffey Jr. or Ken Griffey, excuse me, at first.
Yeah, just a great play.
Just a great play.
All these plays just leading up to what eventually happened in the bottom of the 12th. Fisk leading off against Pat Darcy. The famous drive down the line. Dick Stockton with the call. If it's fair, it's gone. Home run. And that led to a Game 7. Now, I thought this was interesting. SI covered this Game 7 in this article. They do a very long piece on Game 6. And then in Game 7, they almost act like it's Game 7 between the Cardinals and Royals in 1985 when Kansas City won 11-0. This game, they said it was anticlimactic. This game was tied going to the ninth.
Mhm.
Joe Morgan hits a 2-out RBI single to give Cincy a 4-3 lead. And that was it. Boston goes quietly in the ninth against Will McEnany, who gets the save, and it was over. But I just thought it was interesting that they were like, game 6 was great. Game 7, yeah, the Reds won. So,
I wonder how the decision was made by SI not to go a little bigger on that. Because you're right.
right?
The 6 article, game 6 article was great. And you're right, game 7 was like, okay, it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just odd. Wonder how they came up with that idea to do it that way.
All season long, Reds manager Sparky Anderson had proclaimed that we are the best team in baseball. Only this time he had a modifier, but not by much. You got that right, Sparky. There was also another article, a sidebar is what you call these things, by George Plimpton. In relief, agony, ecstasy, and comedy, he wrote this long piece on the 2 bullpens in the series. Mark Plimpton had a real knack for getting the inside scoop on sports stories.
He sure did. It was the book and then movie Paper Lion, where he played quarterback in a preseason game for the Lions and was just awful. And then a few years later, he tried it again with the Baltimore Colts.
Well, can I say one thing about the bullpen story then? It does have.
Yes.
I just thought it was disgusting, the little tobacco spitting thing they would do.
Yeah.
It was where you had to knock like a cup down, and it was like guys were around. It was terrible.
Yeah.
They said, the way they made this sound, the guy sitting in the bullpen, you had to find something to do, and they'd all crowd into one bathroom just to smoke cigarettes.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The Reds, he writes, rookie Raleigh Eastwick said he's never been nervous in his life.
Yeah.
And Will McEnany, who said his pregame ritual is like a Tibetan monk quietly meditating while chaos reigned around him in the bullpen. But yeah, Billy, the Red Sox bullpen, much different. They're rowdy. Dick Drago and Jim Willoughby would chew spit and debate strategy and women while waiting to be called into action.
Yep. And they'd spit it everywhere.
Yeah, there was just tobacco juice all over the bullpen, they said.
It's like the Naked Gun movie from the late 80s,
Right.
where everyone
Yeah,
spit
that's
it
right.
down,
That's right.
even the wives.
Yep. Lefty Bill Lee, who we had on a couple weeks ago, Spaceman, was known for wandering down to the bullpen mid-game to lecture on everything from pitching mechanics to outer space. Teammates would joke that he was half philosopher, half prankster, once suggesting the bullpen phone should be replaced with a bong. And my favorite was during Luis Tiant starts, Boston relievers would jokingly time how long El Tiante took between pitches, some placing mock bets on whether he'd finish an inning before their next handful of seeds was gone. His twisting delivery was fascinating, but also kept them on the edge. And they also didn't come into the game all that often because in 1975, Tiant had 18 complete games and another 3 in his 4 starts during the postseason. So just a fun little article on the bullpens of this series. Now, I wonder once again, because I thought it was a little odd here. You're talking about this great World Series, and then you have this kind of silly article right after it. And I wonder if the rain delays kind of like this was going to run a week after the World Series was supposed to have been over, which should have been last week's issue. And it got pushed back, and they were like, well, we don't want to keep this for another week. And I don't know, because I just thought we go from like this tense, great World Series to talking about these guys spitting. I thought it was a little bit strange in how they did that, but what do I know? That 1975 Big Red Machine was one of the greatest teams ever assembled. They won it all in 75. They repeated again when they swept the Yankees in 76. Joining us is Daryl Smith, who currently serves as a management professor at Cedarville University in Ohio. Previously, Daryl served as an Air Force officer and pilot over a 24-year career. Much of his academic studies and research have centered on leadership and its role in organizational success. He's been trained to find the root causes of organizations' successes and failures. He got his PhD in business, so it's Dr. Daryl Smith. And you must be wondering, okay, where is this going? Well, he has another passion, the Cincinnati Reds. As a boy, he attended several games at Crosley Field, the first game ever at Riverfront Stadium, and the 70, 72, and 75 World Series. 20 years ago, Darrell met and became acquainted with Bob Howsam, the brains behind the Big Red Machine and the central figure in his book, Making the Big Red Machine. So, without any more, Darrell, you are a busy, busy man.
Let's just say I don't generally sit around looking for things to do. Yeah, I keep busy, and I can't remember the last time I was bored or if I've ever been bored. So yes, I like to be active.
Nice. Great. Hey, let's get right to Mr. Bob Howsam. And one of his biggest acquisitions was when he traded for Lil Joe Morgan. And in 75, a bloop single by Morgan in the ninth inning of Game 7 changed the fortunes of this franchise because the Big Red Machine had lost in 72, lost to the Mets in the playoffs in 73, didn't even make the playoffs in 74. How important was it for their legacy to win this classic series?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because I think younger sports fans who weren't, alive during that era, they kind of look back and think, oh, wow, the Reds, they always dominated, they always won. But there was actually a lot of frustration in Cincinnati from 1970 up to October of 75. Many of us Big Red Machine fans were thinking we just can't win the big one. Sort of like the Dallas Cowboys had that reputation in the late 60s and early 70s. They just couldn't get over the hump. And as you mentioned, 72, we took the A's to 7 games. The Mets surprised the Reds in the playoffs in 73. The Orioles had dismantled the Reds in 70. And here we got into Game 7. The Red Sox were ahead yet again. All 4 wins by the Reds in that World Series were come from behind, by the way. And you got Joe Morgan with the game on the line. And you got Ken Griffey on base. And Joe mentioned that pitch that he hit would have been a pitch that would have struck him out a couple years earlier. One of my most fascinating conversations I had with Mr. Bob Howsam was how all that trade went down, but I want to let you direct the train here. So where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit for sure. But I want to talk about on the cover of the issue, we're discussing 2 players, arguably the greatest catcher of all time, Johnny Bench, who is embracing Will McEnany, who just closed things out in the ninth inning of Game 7. Really the one great year of McEnany's career. Tell us a little bit about Will McEnany.
Will McEnany was an Ohio boy from Springfield, which is near Dayton. And frankly, from his own accounts, he was a little bit of a rebellious teenager in high school. He didn't really like listening to his coaches, but fortunately for him, he had a good arm. The Reds took sort of a flyer. That might be a little exaggeration. I think he was taken in the 8th round in 1970 in the draft and worked his way up in the minors. Fortunately for him, the man who ran the Big Red Machine, Sparky Anderson, was one of the first to use the bullpen extensively in spot situations. And McEnany, being a left-hander, Raleigh Eastwick being a right-hander, proved to be a very deadly combination that year. And you're right, that was McEnany's best year. I think he had 15 saves. Yeah, 15 saves that year. And I want to comment on that picture. Actually, I've got it right here. You probably have it up in your podcast, but
What a shot.
I rotate different Sports Illustrated covers in my office depending on the time of year. And in October of every year, this is the one that goes up. And there's a famous painting, and I'm not a real artist connoisseur, so I'll forget his name, but painted a painting called The Prodigal Son. It's about Jesus's parable about the prodigal son. And if you look at that painting and you look at it long enough, you see little details like the father embracing the son. One hand is big and strong and the other hand is soft, supposed to represent God's righteousness and truth, and yet his grace. And so I don't want to, go too far with imagery, but if you look closely at this cover and you look at McEnany's face and the veins on his neck and the tears in his eyes, it really exemplifies how everyone in Cincinnati felt that night when that ball fell into Cesar Geronimo's hand, ending the game. And McEnany's expression says it all in this iconic cover. And really, that was the high point and pinnacle of Will's career.
You just sort of mentioned it. How important was getting that World Series to Cincinnati and people such as yourself?
Yeah. The conventional wisdom in Cincinnati was if the Reds did not win the World Series in 1975, that Sparky Anderson was going to be fired as the manager. I asked Bob Howsam that question point blank when I was in his living room 20 years ago. He said that wasn't in his mind, and so I have to take him at his word. But certainly, that was the rumor on the street: is that if these guys don't finally get over the hump, maybe the problem is in the dugout and not on the field. So I think there's a good chance he may not have come back. It's always a game to play the what if, but I know certainly fans would have gone, how many times can this happen?
And how did you get to know Bob Howsam? I mean, tell me that story and how you guys came up with the book.
Yeah. So when I was in the Air Force, I wrote a book on airplane crashes and what makes airplanes crash, why airplanes crash. And so I enjoyed doing that book because I got to dig into the why behind the question. And I promised my wife I would never write another book till I retired from the Air Force. So when I retired, I started thinking, what do I want to write about? And I began thinking, well, what have I enjoyed in life? I had just moved back to the Cincinnati area. The Big Red Machine was just an integral part of the fabric of the Queen City, Cincinnati, back in the 70s. And I thought, you know what? That team was good, but why? Why were they so good? Because when I traveled around the country in the Air Force and I would tell people I was from Cincinnati, here's the reaction I get. Oh, I love the Big Red Machine. And they'd start naming it, Rose, Bench, Morgan, Foster. They would just start naming these guys. And these were guys from Texas, California. And I thought, wow, this team has appeal outside of Ohio. So when I got back to town, the Reds had just opened the Reds Hall of Fame. And I got acquainted with the museum curator, the Reds historian, Greg Rhodes. And I want to give out a shout out to Greg, a guy named Rick Walls, and another guy named Chris Eckes, who really make that facility go. They've all been a great help to me in this endeavor. But anyway, I took Greg out to lunch and I said, Greg, you've written a book about the Big Red Machine. Here's my book. Here's my book idea. Do you think it's a good one or not? And he said, Daryl, that book has not been written yet, and I think you're the guy to write it. And I said, well, I got one question then. He said, what's that? I said, is Bob Howsam still alive? And he said, yes, he is. And I said, can you tell me where he lives? He said, he lives in Arizona. So I go home, I get on Yahoo People Search, I type in Robert Howsam, Arizona, and boom, an address pops up in Sun City. And I wrote him a 2-page letter. And 5 days later, my phone rang. And it was Mr. Howsam, and he said, Daryl, I'd love to help you in any way that I can. And 2 weeks later, I was on an airplane flying to Phoenix and spent the entire day with him, and then multiple phone calls after that. He was very, very kind to me, and it's one of the thrills of my life, getting to know him and getting to spend a lot of time with him.
So the 1975 Reds team won 108 games. Was that the best Reds team? Because the following year, they have basically the same roster and they win again and sweep the Yankees. But there was something about that 75 Big Red Machine that seems to stand out.
Yeah, great question, Mark. And I've had other podcasts ask me the same question. I think the 75 team was better than the 76 team. Um, I think what helped the 76 team is when the Reds finally got over the hump in 75 and kind of got the monkey off their back, so to speak. I think it gave them all kinds of confidence in 76, thinking nobody can stop us. But if you look at the 75 team, they had a guy named Clay Carroll in the bullpen, and he was traded in the offseason to the Expos. And the bullpen was not quite as good in 1976 as they were in 1975. And so I would give the slight nod to the 75 team, uh, just for the factor of Clay Carroll, the Hawk.
I got to cover the 1990 World Series in Cincinnati between the Reds and A's, and I saw the love affair that city had with the team. I mean, the Bengals came in the late 60s, and you had the Royals in basketball for a while. But is Cincinnati really a Reds town? Does that really epitomize what Cincinnati is?
Absolutely. And it's a great source of pride that the Cincinnati Red Stockings in 1869 were the first all-professional baseball team. One of my earliest memories, 1969, the Reds on the side of Crosley Field facing I-75 so you could see it clearly from the expressway, was the 100th anniversary of baseball's first professional baseball team. And so there's great pride in the fact that we were first. And then there's also great pride of the way the Reds dominated the 1970s. And, sometimes people like to poo-poo the West, like, oh, the West, you're so backwards, you're so caught in your ways. And the fact that the Reds really dominated, particularly in 76 when they swept both the Phillies and the mighty Yankees in the World Series, it was kind of like, okay, you can poo-poo us all you want, but, you know, we're the best thing in baseball right now. But yeah, very much part of the fabric, I'd say central to the core of Cincinnati, Mark.
Daryl Smith is our guest, author of the book Making the Big Red Machine, Bob Howsam and the Cincinnati Reds of the 1970s. This team, this great collection of talent, it just doesn't happen. And back then, not really free agency, it's drafting and it's trading. You mentioned getting to know Bob Howsam. I think the key that took this team, his biggest acquisition was the smallest guy when he got Lil Joe.
Yes.
Talk to us about putting this team together and how that was the made all the difference.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right in your insight, Scott. Uh, there's a couple of key factors that led to the whole Little Joe. Number one, the Reds were playing in Crosley Field, a hitter's paradise. 1970, they had Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, and Lee May, all hitting 40 or close to 40 or over 40 home runs. It was really a power team. Middle of the 1970 season, they moved to Riverfront Stadium. They go from grass to AstroTurf. And that really highlighted the need for speed. Mr. Howsam told me that one of the biggest things he learned from Branch Rickey, who was one of his mentors, was the importance of speed. Speed helps you on offense and on defense. And as he watched the 1971 season unfold in Riverfront, the Reds were mediocre at best. And Howsam was a great student of the game, and he recognized that the Reds didn't have the speed to compete on the AstroTurf. And so he canvassed his staff. Who should we go after? The number one target was Joe Morgan, but there was a huge question. Morgan had a reputation in Houston of being a bad apple. And Mr. Howsam told me if you weren't going to follow the rules, you weren't going to play for the Reds. So before he went after Morgan, he sent out an intelligence gathering and tried to find out, is Morgan really got a bad attitude or is he just in a bad situation? And he came to the point where he felt it was the latter. It was a bad situation for Joe. He told me that that trade took several weeks in unfolding. Originally, it was going to be Lee May, the Reds' first baseman, for Joe Morgan, straight up, 1-for-1. And then the Astros came back and said, "Well, if we give you Morgan, we don't have a second baseman." So Hausum says, "Well, we'll throw in Tommy Helms, our second baseman." Well, then they went back and forth. Ended up being big trade, like 9 guys involved in this trade. But it certainly changed the course of the Cincinnati Reds. I don't think the Big Red Machine would have been the Big Red Machine without that trade. But one interesting footnote before I move off of that. I remember being in the car with my dad, listening to 700 WLW, the flagship station of the Reds, December of 71, and they announced this trade, Joe Morgan for Lee May and the others. And the consensus in town was, what is wrong with Bob Hausum? Is he out of his mind? Lee May is an all-star first baseman. Tommy Helms had been to the all-star game. Who's Joe Morgan? I mean, that was the consensus that Bob Hausum had lost his mind. And of course, by the end of the 72 season, we had changed our attitude about the trade.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure about that. Another key move, at least in 75, was when they moved Pete Rose to third so they could get George Foster in the lineup. How risky was that, and who pushed him for that move?
Yeah. I'm laughing because I had a interview with a guy named Chief Bender. He was the Reds' basically talent development guy. And we talked about it. I said, "Hey, how did that go down?" So the Reds had been befuddled at third ever since they traded Lee May. They'd moved Perez to first. They had tried Dennis Menke. They had tried Danny Dreesen. They had tried Joel Youngblood. And they just couldn't find anybody for third. And Pete had started out as a second baseman. He was Rookie of the Year at second base. And when Tommy Helms came up, they moved Pete to third for a very short time in the 60s. And Pete didn't like it, didn't feel like it fit him. And so they shipped him out to right field. So here we are now, fast forward 9 years later, and Sparky was just brilliant in how he approached Pete with this, excuse me. You know, it's basically like, "Hey, Pete, I've been thinking, if you ever thought maybe," and this is a paraphrase, "but you ever thought maybe trying third base, And Pete's like, "Are you serious?" And, they kind of have a little back and forth. And
This is a Gold Glove outfielder.
Yeah, this guy's won a Gold Glove, right? He's been an all-star at second. He's been an all-star at right. He's been an all-star in left. But I'll tell you what, to backtrack, this is important. When Sparky Anderson got the job in 1969 at the end of the season, his first call was to Pete Rose. And Pete Rose, he said, "Pete, I want you to be my captain." And Pete Rose said this, he goes, "Sparky, I make more money than anybody on the team, but I'll do whatever you need me to do to win." That was 1969, right? At the end of the season. So Sparky floats this idea by Pete. Pete says, "Well, if you can get Sugar Bear to hit me some grounders," George Sugar was one of their coaches, "have him hit me some grounders, and I'll try to find infielders a mid or whatever." Meanwhile, and here's the reason I was chuckling, Chief Bender told me that Bob Hausum would go out to Colorado in the summer for a week or two just to get a break because he loved Colorado. He's from Colorado. So Bob Hausum was in Colorado when Sparky made this move. And Hausum picks up the box score the next day in the newspaper and sees Rose 3B, and he thinks it's a misprint. And Chief Bender came to Pete and he goes, "Pete, I'm sorry, not Pete. Chief Bender came to Sparky. He goes, "Bob's not going to like this." And Sparky goes, "Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry Bob doesn't like it. We need to try it." And you're right, Scott. That's another key piece that turned that whole season. May 3rd, 1975.
So one of the hardest interviews I ever did in my life was trying to interview Marge Schott. I mean, if you were a friend, I guess she'd be open. But if she didn't like you for whatever reason, oh my God, Anything you would say to her, she would turn it around in a negative manner. So she takes over the Reds in 68 after her husband passes away and owns it for 31 years. What kind of an owner? I mean, was she loved, hated? Was she just Marge?
Yeah. Well, Mark, yeah, a lot of what you pointed out was very appropriate there. But I think key thing to remember, yeah, when her husband died, she took over as a minority owner. But the real guy running the Reds, owning the Reds in the 1970s was a guy named Louis Nippert. And Marge was a minority owner. So Nippert, if you ever watch UC Bearcats play football, they play in Nippert Stadium. That was named for Louis Nippert's brother. But Nippert owned the team through the 70s, and Bob Howsam told me that he viewed Louis Nippert as a second father figure to him. They would go out to lunch once a week, and Howsam would just pick his brain about life. When Louis Nippert got ready to sell the team, he was going to donate the team to the city, kind of like the Green Bay Packers. And Bob Howsam talked him out of it. He said, you can't donate it to the city. Politicians don't know how to run a baseball team. So he sold it to the Williams brothers, who are involved with Western Southern Life. And they had it for a year or two and did not enjoy it. The Reds were not doing well in the early 80s. And then that's when they were going to sell it again. And some out of town interest came along. And Marge Schott, who again had been a minority owner since the 60s, stepped up and she got the majority stake there around 1983, 84. But yeah, very eccentric. I certainly can't defend many things she said and did, but I'll tell you this on her behalf. You go around Cincinnati and you see a lot of things that were donated by the Schott Foundation around the city, at the zoo, at the park down by the river, up at UC. So she was generous with some of her cash.
Now, going back to the Big Red Machine, one of the guys that I really liked and I believe should be in the Hall of Fame is Dave Concepcion. How central was he to the architecture and just the part of that team?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if it weren't for Ozzie Smith, Dave Concepcion would be in the Hall of Fame. I think that Ozzie was so flamboyant in that era, he garnered a lot of the attention. I also think Concepcion was overshadowed by some of the bigger stars on the Big Red Machine. But Sparky had his eye on Davey since 1970. He came up in 1970. They thought he could be the starting shortstop. He really struggled in 70, 71, and 72. He was sharing time with guys like Woody Woodward, Darrell Chaney. 73 is really Davey Concepcion's breakout year. And he got picked for his first All-Star game. Unfortunately, broke his leg before he could go to the game. But Bob Howsam told me this. He goes, another thing he learned from Branch Rickey is you had to be strong up the middle. So you look at the Reds, you got Johnny Bench behind the plate. You got Cesar Geronimo, Gold Glover in center field. And you got Joe Morgan, Gold Glover at second, and Dave Concepcion, Gold Glover at short. Concepcion's defense, especially on AstroTurf, was essential. He and Perez sort of invented the idea of, and I think you know where I'm going, throwing the ball deep in the hole to short on one hop.
One bounce, yep.
To first, which actually made it get there faster. And those guys came up, and I just think that kind of shows Davies. Not only was he a great athlete, he was a very intelligent baseball player as well.
So we do a trivia segment here on the show called 50-50. I'm going to give you a 50% chance of getting this trivia question right.
Okay.
From 50 plus years ago. This is older than 50 years, okay?
Do I get shocked if I lose and a prize if I win? Or
No.
You get the same either way.
No, we have a pen to give him, Mark.
Okay, you're right.
We got past our prime pen.
So here's your trivia question. I don't know if you remember this. There used to be a game show called What's My Line? And
Yes.
yeah, and they would have, someone come up and you'd have to guess their profession. But they also would have celebrity guests and they would blindfold them and they'd have to guess who they are. True or false? The Cincinnati Reds baseball team once was the mystery guest on What's My Line?
Wow. I have never heard that question and never pondered that. So my answer would be a total guess. So it's so bizarre. I'm gonna go with yes.
You are correct. Now, can you hazard a guess what year or decade this would have been in?
Well, my guess would be, I think 56 or so when they had,
Oh my God, you are so good. You are right.
yeah, they had Big Clue and a lot of
Yep.
home run hitters that year. Yeah.
June 24th, 1956, Kluszewski was the one that would sit down, but he was surrounded by about 12 players behind him, including Rookie of the Year Frank Robinson.
Wow.
Yeah, it was they had just played a doubleheader and beat the Brooklyn Dodgers twice that day, like 10-6 and 2-1. And that Sunday night, after sweeping the Dodgers, they appeared on the show.
That is wild.
If you go to YouTube, you can find the video. It's kind of mind-blowing when you look at
Really?
it. Yeah, Joe Nuxall is in the group. Um, it's Smokey Burgess. It's very interesting. Of course, Frank looking really young.
Yeah.
Good man to pull 56 out. Impressive.
Pretty good
Yes.
there, Daryl.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad I earned the pin.
You did. You did. It's a pretty blue one, but I got to tell you, there's a little cap on the top you have to pull off, or it doesn't write. So it does write beautifully. A little top on it, please. I got to ask you because you know a lot about him, and I'm talking about Pete Rose. You know exactly what he went through. How tough was that for people in Cincinnati, such as yourself, to see what he went through, suspension at a baseball? How tough was that for you? And what was Pete like when you were around?
Yeah. Heartbreaking and tragic are the two words that come to mind. Um, I met Pete on several occasions when I was growing up. One, I think I write about in the book. They used to have a basketball team in the wintertime. They would play local firemen, local police for fundraisers. And I met Pete and Johnny Bench and others. And Pete was so nice to me. I probably met him 4 or 5 times growing up, and he was always very, very nice. Also, just back to Joe Morgan for a minute, I met him when I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I was taller than Joe was. And I was 13, right? So, talk about little Joe. But, you know, Johnny Bench and Pete Rose kind of vied for being Cincinnati's favorite Red. But Pete always had the honor for one reason, for two reasons. Number one, he grew up in Cincinnati. He grew up on the West Side. The West Side is sort of the blue collar side of Cincinnati, rough tumble, street fighter type guy. Went to Western Hills High School. So he was Cincinnati through and through. A lot of his former high school mates would, go to the games, and Pete would acknowledge them in the stands and things like that. He just epitomized Cincinnati. And Cincinnati actually felt a little betrayed when he took that free agent contract in 1979 from the Phillies. It was kind of like, And Johnny Bench, on the other hand, chose to stay his whole career. But Cincinnati kind of re-embraced Pete when Bob Howsam brought him back in 1984 as the player manager. And, a lot of star baseball players, and I'm sort of rambling here, so bear with me, but a lot of star baseball players don't make very good managers. But Pete really knew the game. Tracy Jones tells a story. He was in the dugout playing for the Reds, and they're playing the Astros. And Terry Poole of the Astros is on first base, and Pete's managing the Reds from the dugout. And he turns around the players. He goes, "Poole's a good player, but he just gets hurt all the time." Well, on cue, the pitcher pitches over to try to pick Terry Poole off, and Poole drives back into first base and injures himself. Right? And gets taken out of the game, right? So that's just the kind of, insight and intuition Pete had in the game. And as you know, when he was managing, we came in second, we came in second, we came in second. He broke Ty Cobb's record. And then the whole news broke about the gambling and then Pete's denials. And, turns out he was lying, but a lot of people wanted to believe him. And on the one hand, it was a feeling of betrayal. On another hand, it was a feeling of pity. It was almost like a mother, if her son, goes off the rails a little bit. It breaks her heart, but she still loves her son, right? And that's really the whole thing with Pete in Cincinnati. Yeah.
Yeah, tragic is definitely the word right there.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons the 75 team is maybe considered better is because of the Red Sox. The Red Sox elevated the Reds to such a high status or stature, but the next year they sweep New York. It's actually a more impressive, finish for Cincinnati. And so they're back-to-back champions, and then that's it. That team does not win another World Series. They start to break them apart a little bit. What led to the end of the Big Red Machine?
Yeah. Great question. I remember watching this. We had moved in 1976 to Anchorage, Alaska. My dad had gotten a job transfer, so that's why I didn't go to any of the 76 World Series games.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
looking for you.
Yep. Well, thanks. I would love to have been there. Sorry to let you guys down. But I remember watching the interviews in the dugout, excuse me, in the clubhouse afterwards, and they were interviewing Louis Nippert and Bob Halsam, and of course Sparky and Johnny Bench was the MVP. But I remember, oh, so vividly, Bob Halsam got really, really somber and really, really serious. Because put it in context, Bob Halsam, his main mentor was Branch Rickey, but the organization he admired the most was the Yankees because he grew up in baseball in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s watching the Yankees dominate. And so to have them beat the Yankees of all teams 4-0, it was sort of like he had reached the crescendo, the peak of his career. And so you would think he would be absolutely jubilant. And certainly he was happy. I don't want to misrepresent that. But at the same time, he got very somber and very serious. And he basically said, and I have the exact words in the book, I can't remember off the top of my head, but essentially he said, we're never going to see this again. Because he knew that free agency was coming. And he knew that, I mean, he was a visionary. He saw AstroTurf coming, right? He knew the free agency was going to change the game, and he knew that you wouldn't be able to have 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on a team for years and years and years. And he said, this will never happen again. And so that off season, 2 very significant things happened. Don Gullett signed as a free agent with the New York Yankees. And I remember they asked Sparky about it in the clubhouse in Yankee Stadium. He goes, no, Donnie will be back. But Bob Halsam told me he wouldn't give a player more than a 2-year contract. And the Yankees were willing to give Gullett a 5-year contract. So it wasn't the money, it was the length for Gullett. So Gullett leaves. He gets replaced by Woody Fryman. Not exactly an equal trade, right? And that's the other shoe that dropped was Bob Halsam always was a believer that you got to keep the team young. And he saw Danny Dreesen pining away on the pines, as it were. And he says, I got to get him in the lineup at first. Perez was 34 or 35 at the time. I think 35. So he trades Perez to the Expos for, along with Will McEnany, by the way. Tony Perez, Will McEnany for Woody Fryman and a reliever from the Expos. The Reds, guys on the Reds have told me this. Mr. Halsam told me this. The clubhouse was not the same after Tony Perez left. And it sort of took some air out of the tires. Then you got age kicking in. Dodgers win 77, 78. Pete leaves after 78. They did win the Western Division in 79. Pirates beat them in the playoffs, but by this time, age was catching up. Gullett was gone. Perez was gone. Rose was gone. And as I say in my book, the Big Red Machine slowly ground to a halt. But I think the two keys, if I could summarize, were free agency with Gullett leaving, and then the spiritual soul of the team going to Montreal, Tony Perez.
Dr. Daryl Smith has a passion for teaching and aviation. His online educational website, draviation.com, teaches lifelong learners about the history and physics behind flight, and he obviously has a passion for the Big Red Machine. Thank you so much, Daryl, for sharing some of that passion. The book is The Big Red Machine. And
making the Big Red Machine.
Making the Big Red Machine with Bob Howsam, yes, the architect. Thanks, Daryl, so much for joining us today here on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Hey, great joining three knowledgeable baseball fans. Thanks, guys.
You know, we talk often about how we try and get guests, so this is just another example of strangers helping out for no reason whatsoever. I tried to get Will McEnany. I even got his phone number, and I called him. And I'm pretty sure he hung up on me after I told him who I was. So I told him I'm not a telemarketer, click. So the guy who gave me that number has a Twitter page, Cincinnati Reds History on X. In fact, the picture on his page is the one that Daryl showed us of Bench holding McEnany after winning the World Series. I don't even know this guy's name, but on his page is a link to Daryl's book. I thought he was Daryl. Nope. I did a little research, found Daryl in Cedarville, and there you have it. But Cincinnati Reds History on Twitter, thank you. It's strangers doing acts of kindness. Just a reminder that despite what many think, all is not lost in the world. Thanks again, Daryl.
I know that Will McEnany is in Florida. That's about all I know. But he did come up for the Big Red Machine reunion they had at the end of June. He was among the players who were there. And so that was good that he came up. I'm sorry you didn't get him on the podcast, but hopefully I pinch hit it somewhat adequately. And
you did a great job.
You hit 1,000.
I really enjoyed it. The Lord's blessed me. I've gotten to do a lot of good things. And so I was glad I got to hang out with you guys.
Hey, we do not look at it about who we didn't get. We always look at who we did, and we can't thank you enough. So thank you. College football, for whom the bell toils. The night before USC's 24-17 win over Notre Dame, Coach John McKay joked about the inevitable cold rain in South Bend, predicting misery but also victory behind his star tailback. Mark, Ricky Bell had quite a game. In fact, he had basically two games, a first half and a second half.
Yeah, here's the amazing thing. In the first half, he carried the ball 25 times. Think about that. There are running backs now that don't carry them 25 times in a game. You know,
Most.
That's rare, right?
Yeah.
He carried it 25 times in the first half. He only gained 65 yards, and the Trojans were trailing Notre Dame 14-7. But in the second half, he carried the ball only 15 times, but gained 100 yards. And so he finished today 40 carries, 165 yards, and USC came from behind to win the game by 7, which also comes a year after the infamous 55-24 game, where USC scored the final 55 points in that contest. So not as dramatic as that game, but a very impressive win in South Bend over the Irish.
You know, and Billy, as if 40 carries weren't enough, John McKay liked to use Ricky Bell wherever he could.
And Ricky Bell was up for it. They said, when he asked Ricky Bell to play linebacker as a freshman, he said, hey, sure, I'll do it. And then as a sophomore, he was asked to play fullback, and he said, sure thing, I'll do that. So Ricky Bell was a true team player.
Yeah, Bell was kind of a quiet, unassuming kid from Houston, but he was very honored to be part of Tailback U. So he worked very hard because he wanted to live up to the legacy of OJ and Mike Garrett. McKay thought he was an ideal player. I love this quote. I think he used this about a lot of his players, but McKay said after the game, why do I make Bell carry the ball so much? Well, it's not that heavy. So he just like, tailback you, man, student body right, student body left. But one last thing, there were rumors that McKay might end his 16-year run as head coach of the Trojans and go to the NFL. And those rumors turned out to be true. His last season at SC was this season here in 75. And in 1977, with the #1 pick in the NFL draft, they did not take Tony Dorsett. No, they took Ricky Bell. Had a couple of rough seasons early on in the NFL, but then busted out in 1979, had almost 1,300 yards. But I had forgotten about this. He gets sick a couple of years later with, just kind of like something where you didn't think that much of it, but he had this disease called dermatomyositis, and it led to him having heart failure, and he died in 1984. Ricky Bell was just 29 years old, but probably, if you ask me, Mark, you tell me, I would say of all those running backs at SC, maybe the most underrated of all of them. He was a great running back. You could make a case, a serious case, that he should have won the Heisman Trophy in what, 76, 70, 77, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, Marcus Allen had obviously a better NFL career, but Ricky Bell was like the great heart, had the heart of a champion and stuff like that. And tough, maybe the toughest runner that USC ever had. And, they made a TV movie about his life called The Triumph of the Heart that aired in 1991. I believe it was on CBS, but I'm not positive. But anyway, Mario Van Peebles played him, and I actually did a feature. I went out and interviewed him when they were shooting at SC. And Mario, not quite the same size as Ricky, but
Right.
but you know what? Hey, we all have to do what we have to do.
I'm fine with you bringing this up, Mark, but I don't know about you, Bill. I mean, was it on CBS or not? Because I'm not going to go channel surfing and try and find it. I'm not going to.
Well, you can find it on Netflix.
Well, no, I want it
or
on
Prime
either
Video.
CBS or NBC.
You can stream it on Netflix, and you can pay $17.99 to rent or buy it on Prime Video.
Oh boy!
Oh my! Wow.
Scott, I know with Mark mentioning that, he should have won. He should have beaten Archie Griffin for the Heisman. 1,800 yards and all the stats he had in 75. And then they gave it to Archie Griffin.
I think Archie Griffin would disagree with you.
I know he would.
Yeah.
I know he would.
Say to hell with you.
He probably is saying that right now as he's listening live.
TV radio. NBC's coverage of the 1975 World Series became a landmark moment for both baseball and television, drawing an estimated 71 million viewers for Game 7 and a total of 367 million across the series. Big, big, big numbers, Mark.
There are big numbers. Now, you know that at that time, I think Game 7 was the highest rated World Series game played. It would later be passed, I think, by the 1980 World Series between Philadelphia and Kansas City. But I mean, the viewership was just insane. I think they had between 50 and 55 million viewers like watching the game back then. And back then, you didn't have all the options that you have now.
Right.
So, for instance, the 1980 Game 6, the 1980 World Series between the Phillies and Royals had, I think, a rating of 40. I think like 40% of the sets that were on were watching it. Now there's just too many other things. You can never get a rating like that. Before that, Game 7 in 1975 between the Reds and Red Sox got a 39.6 rating. So again, almost 40% of the television sets that were on were watching that game.
Yeah, think of that. That big rating for a World Series that involved Kansas City. Nothing against Kansas City, but you're always hearing about, it's got to be a big market team, and
right.
It just showed that they dominated because there wasn't that much more to choose from. The other thing that was big was director Harry Coyle, a veteran of televised baseball since the late 40s, credited the success to night games. Yeah, they started playing these games when people weren't at work or school. Poor Mark in 1968 had to miss the World Series. He wouldn't have missed this one.
Nope.
So, and rain delays had unintentionally pushed 5 of the games into night slots. So they may even have their start time was supposed to be maybe 5 o'clock local time back east, but it got pushed back because of the rain. And all of a sudden, oh wow, look, people can see this. And Billy, they also had some really innovative production values in this, including placing some cameras in some great spots.
Yeah, they put a permanent camera position in the left field scoreboard in Fenway Park for the 6th game. It replaced a handheld camera that was used intermittently in the wall during games 1 and 2. And by putting that camera out there, they got the great shot of Carlton Fisk is trying to keep the ball fair for his home run in
Yeah,
Game 6.
came just a perfect angle for that.
Yep. And I mean, honestly, just to think that you do that, let's try it for Game 6, and you get arguably the greatest play ever, or greatest
Yeah,
home run ever hit in the World Series.
yep, yep. The last day game to be played in the World Series. You guys have a guess?
Hmm.
Last day game, like, let me think here. 1970, they played a day game.
A's,
71,
A's
70.
Reds.
Later than you would have thought.
Oh, wow, okay.
Game 6 of the 1987 World Series,
Really?
Cardinals at Minnesota.
Minnesota. Yep.
Yeah,
That was the when they were in the dome.
I was shocked.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
But still, that's almost 40 years ago. So, college football, the enemy lives up the road. U versus State. That's the rivalry in Arizona between the Wildcats and the Sun Devils, framing it as part of a broader American pattern of clashes between the haves and the have-nots. University of Arizona was founded in 1776 and produced all the state leaders, while Phoenix and its suburb Tempe have Arizona State, and it's like a teaching school when it's first brought up. So they both have football programs, but Arizona is just kicking their tail and dominating that until 1958. And what happened then, Billy?
Yeah, they hired Frank Cush. Frank Cush, who took ASU to the top of the mountain, actually got them to a number of Fiesta Bowls. He also whooped up on ASU six or U of A. He was actually 16-5 versus Arizona. The man knew how to coach.
Yeah.
And because what it was is that U of A also brought in a coach from back east, thinking they could, go against Cush. Jim Young only lasted 3 years, and he couldn't beat ASU. He was 1-3 versus them. So no, that's Frank Cush was great at Arizona until he tried to beat up the punter.
Yeah, he was a little bit like Woody Hayes,
Yes.
and there's no denying Woody Hayes, was a hell of a football coach. He just had a temper that was unmatched until we got to know Frank Cush, who apparently was right there with them. But you're right. I think they beat Arizona 47-0 in the pivotal election year game when they were deciding whether or not Arizona State would be a university, and they won, and that helped get them the votes. And yeah, like you said, 16-5 against Arizona, that will make a lot of alumni happy. So, and he basically, ASU was a true powerhouse. They weren't just a local powerhouse.
Yep.
They were playing for they were top 5 teams back in the 70s under this guy.
They finished second in the rankings in 75. They finished 12-0. And then they won the Fiesta Bowl. From 71 to 77, ASU won 5 Fiesta Bowls. They
Wow.
were a great team back in the day.
Elsewhere in college football, Mark, tell us about your crappy Bruins.
They weren't crappy in 75, and they're not crappy now, okay? UCLA registered or tightened the Pac-8 race. They beat Cal 28-14. Quarterback John Shara ran for 3 touchdowns, and running back Wendell Tyler rushed for 143 yards. And Wendell Tyler, there's a name for you, had
I
a
loved him.
decent NFL career. He came out of Crenshaw High, played at UCLA, was drafted in the third round of the 77 draft, played with the Rams and then the 49ers, won a Super Bowl title, I believe, with the Niners, and made a Pro Bowl in 1984.
Mhm.
So had a pretty good career.
He did. He did. I remember him
Six
having
thousand
having
six.
a case of the fumbles.
Yeah.
He would
Yes, that's right, with the Rams.
yeah, he would have that every once in a while, but yeah, good little football player, no question about it.
He had 3 years where he ran over 1,000 yards in the NFL.
He was one of my favorite players. I loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had 12 touchdowns one year and 81 for the Rams.
Yeah, he was a good player, no question about it. What else is going on in college football, Billy?
There was a historic 23-yard run by Archie Griffin, giving him a 4-year total of 4,730 yards, 15 more than the NCAA record set in 1969 by Cornell's Ed Marinaro. Scott, didn't you see a picture of Marinaro on a magazine coming up?
Yeah. Yeah, in the November 10th cover, there's a nice shot of Fran Tarkenton, and right to his left, going out for a pass, is Ed Marinaro from Cornell, whose claim to fame was that he later starred in Hill Street Blues,
That's right.
one of my
With
favorite shows from back in the day. So
with another former
yeah, with Mike
ath-
Warren. Houston gives them bums rush. Once a laughingstock of pro football under owner Bud Adams, plagued by poor trades, constant coaching changes, and demoralized players, the Houston Oilers have transformed into serious contenders under coach Bum Phillips. The Oilers were 1-13 in both 72 and 73, but in 74 they were 7-7, and this year they're even better, emphasizing camaraderie, discipline, and a punishing three-man defensive front led by Curly Culp, Toady Smith, and Elvin Bethea. Phillips turned a team of misfits, Billy, into a cohesive unit on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I like the fact that a young rookie running back, Don Hardiman, he was from Texas A&I. Don Hardiman said he made a few predictions. He said he was going to make Dan Pastorini an All-Pro. He was going to score every seventh time he carried the ball, and he would become Rookie of the Year. Okay, let's see. Did he get any of those right, do you guys think?
no.
He did. He did make Pastorini a Pro Bowl for the only time in his career.
Ah.
In 1975, he scored a touchdown every 129th time he touched the ball, and Mike Thomas of Washington won the Rookie of the Year.
Ah,
So he didn't come through, but hey, you gotta, be able to have some predictions if you're a young guy.
Yeah,
I had never heard of him.
Neither
And
did I.
I think he
That's-
had ended up with 600 yards and
He
maybe
did. Five
uh,
TDs, 648 yards. That was his
yeah,
best season.
and that was his best season. Yeah.
Yep,
yeah,
Texas A&I. We all know who went to Texas A&I,
yes,
right,
Jim
Mark?
Hill.
Yep.
I think this was their first winning season since 1967. But what I love about this article, there's a picture of Bum Phillips at practice. And the image we've always had of Bum Phillips
Yeah.
is that big cowboy hat on the field, good old cowboy. And here he's wearing a regular kind of like football cap,
Yep.
with his glasses. Like I hardly recognized him.
Yeah. Yeah. And, let's be honest, he was a big guy by the time we saw him, but here he was pretty slender,
He looked
much
it, yep.
younger. I think one of the things with Bum Phillips is that he became such a caricature that you forget that he was a hell of a coach.
He was. Nah, he's just a bum.
Right.
But you think about it, he does everything there for Houston, gets them in the playoffs, turns them around, and then in 1985, after going 11-5 and losing in the wild card round, he was fired on New Year's Eve by Bud Adams because Bum Phillips wouldn't hire an offensive coordinator.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not because he had done bad or a contract. No, they wanted him to hire an offensive coordinator because they said the team had trouble scoring. Phillips refused, and so they fired him. And then they had no double-digit wins for 9 of the next 10 years. That was a smart move.
Say, yeah. I always say that whenever you want to fire someone, I have all these friends
who
that
you hiring?
always want to fire Dave Roberts, and I'm like, well, okay, who do you want to replace him with?
But here's the worst thing. They fired Phillips on New Year's Eve, 1980. That
Yeah.
sucks. Why would you do that?
Right. Yeah. All right, let's get to the Oh, you know what? Before we move on, Billy, talk to me about the Oilers, Billy.
Now, okay. Every time we talk about him, or every time I think about him, I just think of Billy White Shoes Johnson running up and down the fields. And he was the guy that did the great little dance in the end zone.
Yeah.
What would they call that dance? Just, with his legs going crazy. Just an amazing, fun player. But if you look at 1975, he only had one touchdown for the Oilers. And then 13 and 7 years in Houston. So I know the highlights that I used to see it because I always think, oh, I love this Billy White Shoes Johnson because he gets in the end zone. He does a fun dance. What a guy. But it wasn't like he was in the end zone very much.
No.
I thought maybe, guy would have 20 touchdowns. No, he didn't.
I think the thing with Billy White Shoes is that when he did score, it was a 65-yard punt return. So it just stuck in your mind because he wasn't scoring too many 2-yard touchdown runs.
No.
And it seemed like, every touchdown he scored, Cosell would put on the Monday night highlights. So
because of that dance.
Everyone did that dance.
Yes.
I forget what it called, the electric slide or something like that. So Billy White Shoes Johnson, boy. If he isn't emblematic of 70s NFL, I don't know what is. Pan Am Games at the seventh Pan Am Games in Mexico City, U.S. athletes faced fierce competition, mostly against Cuba. The U.S. women's basketball team captured gold for the first time since 1963, beating Cuba 70 to 64. Meanwhile, the men's squad also beat Cuba behind Billy's standout performances from
Robert Parrish and Otis Birdsong of University of Houston.
yeah, the Chief.
Yep, still making it, man.
Yeah, and how about this? They beat Cuba despite the Cuban commissioner of their basketball team punching a referee. So
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. In the village cafeteria,
yeah,
because they lost to Puerto Rico.
so
And he found the Canadian referee and punched him in the eye.
oh my God,
That's what you do. That's what
that's
you
just
do.
insane. And in boxing, 17-year-old Michael Dokes, whom we spoke about last week or a couple weeks ago, pushed Cuban Olympic champion Teofilo Stevenson to the brink. He landed a bunch of punches, demonstrating his potential, even though Stevenson ultimately retained the decision. But this really showed that the 17-year-old kid, I would say, not only does it show that the kid has talent, but it shows his confidence because, man, think of that. This is Stevenson by then had won how many gold medals? I mean, he was a
Yeah.
true veteran. They say that he could have fought with the Frasers and the Alis, and he's, 17-year-old Dokes is going toe to toe with him. So I thought that was very interesting.
And the thing about Stevenson is he said he doesn't care about money. He goes, I don't care about money. I want to stay amateur. I'll box and then I'll quit. He doesn't care about money. His family didn't care about money. All he cared about was boxing for Cuba and then going on his way. That's why he never went pro.
Yep.
Right.
Didn't care.
I had to look it up, but they still have the Pan Am Games. They used to be a big deal,
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah, you're
uh,
right. I remember them
but
too.
not as much anymore. You know what else used to be a big deal is commercials, but I now fast forward through almost all of them or like during streaming. So I don't have to see ads except for when I do this show and Mark does an ad. Then all of a sudden, ads come back. It's like 1975 all over again.
Well, this is an ad for after you've played your favorite sport, reach for the ultimate high. Shampoo only once, now condition hair leave on, sponge body with shower lotion, now rinse through, head to toes, dry yourself, now condition your whole body. The ultimate high. You demand a lot from your body, so say thank you. So this is called the ultimate high, but the thing it gets to me the product is called Unicure. Um, there's there's a picture of a naked guy.
Is
It's
it
not an
you?
actual picture. It's more like a drawing, but he's like lathering his hair. There's soap going everywhere, and you see his behind, his naked behind, and his whole naked body there. And then there's an image of a football player, drawing of a football player holding like a football, like right where his like lower leg is, right under the bums. So a very, very interesting ad.
Bill, it seems to me every time Mark uh, talks about an ad, the next thing we got a naked guy he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I
Well,
agree
it
with
looks like
you.
he's prepping to streak.
Uh, you know, I'm not sure what Mark's trying to tell us,
It's
but it might be
supposed to be a
something.
family show, okay?
Yes.
Well, I don't know why in 1975 they said, "Hey, this is a good idea. Let's put this product up there and have the naked guy like,
Mark, you should look up and see
showering."
if that product is still around.
Yeah, Unicorn. It's professional retail. It's based in Youngstown, New York. So,
The fortune cookie smiled. Now, this is one of those stories that I had no idea, that Wilt Chamberlain almost ended his career with the Knicks.
Almost.
What happened?
Well, the Lakers said, you want Chamberlain? Sure, just give us Earl Monroe, Phil Jackson, and a top draft choice in cash. The Knicks said no. So Chamberlain came back and told Jack Kent Cooke, the owner of the team, that he'll play for him for one more year. He had been out for the past two, but he'd play for $450,000. Not a chance there. So the Knicks finally, the Lakers relented and say, "Hey man, go get it, have a meeting. We'll see what you can do." Well, Wilt says he'll have a meeting with him. Knicks fly out to LA. No, no, no. Wilt's in Hawaii. So the NBA, the Knicks were pissed off. So the NBA steps in, Larry O'Brien, commissioner, and says he's going to remove Wilt from the Lakers suspended list and make him a free agent, and told every team that if you sign Wilt, you'll have to compensate the Lakers. So all the teams dropped out because they had no idea what would happen if they signed Wilt. So they turned around, the Knicks did, and got Spencer Haywood from the Sonics.
Hmm.
There you go.
Interesting.
Wilt had it, man.
I mean, you got to think that if Wilt really wanted to still play,
He didn't.
right? That was
He
the
was a
thing.
volleyball player at the time.
He was
The pro volleyball player.
so interested in playing for New York that he flew a extra 3,000 miles away in the other direction.
God, how irritated must that be? All the Knicks brass gets out to LA and they go to his agent and say, "Okay, where do we meet Wilt?" And they go, "He's in Hawaii."
Yeah, Maui.
Oh,
Yeah,
By the way, I've had some really good news for you.
yeah.
You can get Unicure. It's still there. It
and
was
order
founded
it.
in 1969. It was the number one selling professional product in Western Canada before it went to the US. It's lasting results over 50 years. It still exists.
Wow.
So I went to Amazon.com to see if I could find it.
Did you
Because I
get me
would
a
like
jug of
to.
it?
What?
Get me a jug of it.
I will. It's like I'm trying to locate it. It says it's here, but I don't see it. But it
Liars.
still exists. Yeah.
Mark, we'll give you $1 if you recreate that whole commercial.
It wasn't a commercial, it was an ad. And it
An
was a
ad, but I'll
drawing.
take
It
a
was
picture of
real
it and I'll
picture.
I'll take a picture of it. I'll put it in the exact same thing and I'll put it up on somewhere. We'll see what happens. Mark goes nuts over Rubicon.
Unicure.
I mean that
Unicure.
literally.
For the record, because somebody's got to keep score.
For the record, Bill, you've got a couple of them. Why don't you start with an update on Steve Bartkowski?
Well, he suffered a dislocated elbow, which to me sounds very painful. You think he's going to miss the season? Nah, he just missed 3 games. Boy, different world. And then in the NHL WHA, Jacques Plante, he retired. He had won 7 Vezinas, and in 1959 became the first goalie to ever wear a mask. I still wonder
really?
how that conversation went when he told everybody he was doing it.
What was his
You're
name?
serious.
What was his name again?
Jacques Plante.
And he's the first guy to wear a mask. Gosh,
Yep.
imagine that.
I think we actually
I
talked
remember
to
him.
Bernie Perrant about that.
Hmm.
Because
He played for the Canadians, right? Did he play for the Canadians?
He did. And he also played in the WHA at the end of his career. Yeah.
That's just insane to think they used to play without a mask.
Isn't it? That's why
But
they
I'm
have a
saying,
lot of
but the thing
missing
is
teeth.
when he decided to wear a mask, there had to be a lot of blowback from the other goalies. Like, what's Plante doing?
Right?
What is he? No, you don't do that. You can't,
I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
How will you be able to see anything?
exactly. And now the masks are big selling items because they make them beautiful now.
Yep.
Mhm.
Gorgeous.
They're like collector items.
Mark, you got one?
Oh, do I got one? And it doesn't involve a naked person. Now, this is actually a sad story. Tom Pate is a linebacker, in the CFL, okay? And he's playing for the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 1975. And on October 18th, they're playing the Stampeders in Calgary, and he gets critically hurt on a play after striking the head who was blocking another player. So he ends up like hitting his head. He suffered an aneurysm and dies. He
Oh.
never regained consciousness, died 3 days later. He was only 23 years old.
Well, that's the other thing. That's the other kind of story Mark does. If it's not nudity, it's death.
Death. We all
I
know,
know.
Mark, it's going to be death, nudity, UCLA, and movies. Not in that order.
Maybe tigers.
Yeah, yes, you're right, Tigers. Sorry.
Maybe the Tigers. No,
Because I think
but-
Mark got to talk about the 84 Tigers,
yeah.
another Tigers that won
68
World
Tigers.
Series, and Jack Morris.
And Jack
Yeah.
Morris.
And Wendell
And
Tyler.
And Wendell
right.
Tyler, that's right. And John Shara.
Yep.
And the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yep.
It don't exist anymore. But yeah, no, but that's just, can you imagine, man?
No.
23 years old.
No.
Yeah.
I think that was his rookie year
You
too.
got the world by the tail, and
Yeah.
I got a big one. The WFL folded. After completing almost half of its second year, the World Football League is done. Poor attendance, lack of TV exposure, and this thing called the NFL led to its demise, which looking back, you could see from a mile away. They couldn't make payroll. They were doing all sorts of things. They're moving teams in the middle of the night. I don't know how they ever thought this was going to work. I mean, they were signing some big names, no question about that. We did a whole thing on when they signed Zonk and Kick and Warfield and all those guys, but
I
we
think the
did more
schedule was
stories
weird
on
too.
the WFL's problems than we did on, people actually playing well. So
I
Well,
think
the
Anthony
problem
Davis
too
is
with
one
the
we talked about the most.
say again, Billy?
I think Anthony Davis was who we talked about the most.
Yeah. Yep.
but the problem is this is a spring summer league. And back in the 70s, baseball was still king. And it's just hard. People are like think of football at a particular seasonal sport. And you know, it's just hard. And plus the games, a lot of the games were on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, not the traditional times you would think for football.
Yep. Faces in the crowd, Mark.
I got Daryl Shepard, who's a junior at Odessa, Texas High School. You know Odessa, isn't that what was the movie in Friday Night
Friday
Lights?
Night Lights. Yep.
Yep. Football powerhouse. He gained 1,441 yards in 7 games. 5'10", 150-pound quarterback, rushed for 451 yards, returned punts, passed for 617. Um, had a total of 15 touchdowns. But what's really interesting about Daryl is, okay, so he ended up playing college ball first with the Houston Cougars, Bill's first school,
Yep.
and then he played for the Oklahoma Sooners from 79 to 81.
Mm.
He's the all-time leading passer for Odessa High School. In 76, he passed for over 1,100 yards and he ran for 920. So it's about 2,000 yards of offense. It was named a parade All-American. So he's the older brother of the late Derek Shepard, and he is the uncle of Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so, and we all know Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
So that's Daryl for you.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Mark, that was a good one. Billy, you got one on a 14-year-old little girl.
I do. She was a high school. She was 14 years old in high school in Anchorage, Alaska. She won 3 marathons for girls under 18. But later on, she would become an American cross-country skier, and she competed in the women's 5 kilometers at the 1980 Winter Olympics.
I mean, think of that. That's just insane. She's running marathons. Nah, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete.
Yep. And like you're saying, instead of
Right. And we're talking one's a summer Olympic game, the other one's a winter Olympic game. That's just
it's
insane.
amazing.
Yeah. 19th hole, we're almost done. Mark, Iowa fans not too happy with John McKay.
No, they're angry. Dick Eislauer, Bob Thieber, which is a great last name, Dan Schmidt from Bettendorf, Iowa. They said that they didn't like the fact that John McKay said those Iowa's lousy fans. But he said that is not correct. We had crowds of over 57,000, 52,000, 54,000, and 59,000 for each of the first 4 Hawkeye home games in 75. And last year, Iowa ranked 21st nationally in attendance, averaging over 48,000, even though Iowa had only won 8 of its last 51 games. And it just ended a 9-game losing streak. It's easy to be a fan of a winning football program. It takes dedication and character to be an Iowa fan. But good news for this trio, because Iowa football would get quite good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hayden Fry
That's
turned
right.
that program around. I don't think McKay was talking about attendance figures. I think he was talking about the ones that were there, or at least a handful of them were pretty disrespectful and obnoxious. But
Well, they're saying they're passionate and they come out and support their team.
Bill, what are Ohio State football fans like?
Freaking terrible. My God, they wanted. I mean, we weren't even at that. We were going before the game just to see the stadium and stuff. And when they played USC years ago, I had at least 10 guys try to hit me and fight me, and then another guy tried to swing at me through a moving bus. It was just a great time for all.
But I'm sure they sell out their games, so they have
They
good
did.
fans.
I remember the police came by and said, "You guys might want to leave." Yeah, thanks. Tough town.
You got a 19th hole, Billy?
I do. It's from John Hartsock from Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. He says Jack Kent Cooke really made a mistake by paying a selfish, goal-happy player like Marcel Dion 1.5 million to play for the LA Kings. He made an even bigger mistake by trading two of his best players, defenseman Terry Harper and left wing Don Maloney, to Detroit to acquire Dion. Dion will fit into LA coaches Bob Pulford's rigid defensive style of hockey like a square fits into a circle. Cook always gets his man, but it's always the wrong one. Yeah, he got two in a month. Who was
Yeah.
the other guy he got?
Well, let's see. So Dion was an all-star in 10 of his 12 years in LA, scored 550 goals for the Kings, is the
Yep.
franchise's all-time leading scorer for a
Yep.
little while longer before
was a
Kopitar
statue.
passes him this year. So in the summer of 75, Cook got Kareem to the Lakers and Dion to the Kings. So
Yeah.
you may not always get the wrong one, Mr. Hartsock. So he basically changed the face of the franchise, both of them, in about a 6-week period.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Hey, I hope we did okay as we look back one last time on that classic of fall classics, the 75 series between the Reds and the Red Sox. 50 years later, still the one to which all World Series are measured. So next week, Fran Tarkenton on the cover of SI. We'll talk Fran and the Vikes and much more next week. Until then, have a great week, everyone. For Bill and for Mark, I'm Scott, and we are, go ahead, guys, in 3,
Past
2,
our
1.
Past our prime.
Oh, this is just horrible.
It is horrible. By the way, instead of Fran Tarkenton, can we talk about Fran Drescher?
Absolutely
You
not.
probably will.
See ya.
See ya.